Hello friends, welcome to TechnoGeek SFDC. So in today's video, we are going to see how we usually create a utility component for LWC components. So first question always comes is why we should create a utility component, right? So utility components are those components where you can keep your reusable codes and which can be referred in different LWC components. This basically enhance the reusability as well as it will uh, it will basically reduce the number of line of code. Instead of writing the same logic again and again, you can basically just have it on one place and then call that method every time. So in LWC, how we basically create a utility component. So for example, let's take an example that I have, let's say, two components. Both are using a kind of sum functionality. Okay, so where I need to create a summation method where I'll be passing, let's say, two number. I'm just taking a small example. So where I need to create a summation method and I'll be passing, let's say, two numbers there, and it will just sum and return it. Okay. Now I have two approaches in this. Either in each of the component, I'll just write both of them. Okay. So in each of the component, I'll write code, which is again going to be a duplicate code. Okay. So that is one approach. Another approach is we are going to create a utility component where we will be placing all these codes in one place, and then my LWC components will call this utility component. So how we usually create a utility component? Okay. So it's the same similar to how we create a LWC component. I'm just using the Lightning Studio. You can even use your VS Code or any other plugin whichever you are comfortable in using. So let's say I'll just give a name here. I'll keep it as is exposed utility component. I'll just select it as to keep it on different pages, and then flow screen utility bar. Okay, and then I'll deploy. Now, one of the major thing which you need to keep in mind is utility components are basically used without any HTML. So this is my component, LWC component, which I created. Now I can just delete the HTML component of it. Okay. So as you can see, now the HTML component got deleted. Now I'll go to JS. So in LWC component, whenever you create it, you by default get these types of options, right? You have the import, and then you have export default class and other things. For utility component, again, we are going to use the export functionality, but for each method, we can define different exports. So I'll show you how. Okay. Okay, so what I'll do here is, instead of keeping all these things, what we can use is we can use export feature of of the JavaScript. So what export feature do is basically it makes the method available out to be used in different other places as well, basically outside of the current component. Okay, so let's say I'll put export, and then I'm just going to give a method do summation, and I will pass the parameters here. Let's say I'll just give number one and number two. Okay, and then inside this, I'll just write return number one plus number two. Okay, so this is how we basically create a export method. Now, once I create this export method, this can be utilized in different components. So we will just deploy this component once into our org. Yeah, with export, basically when we write any function in JavaScript, we need to specify whether it's a function. So I just write export function, and then I'm just giving something like do summation, and then number one, number two, and then I'm just returning it. Okay, so this is a very simple a method I have just created. Similarly, if you want, you can write any other functions as well. Let's say export function, download CSV, and then whatever CSV related parameters you pass, you can write your own logic to download CSV file. Okay, this also you can do. If you want, you can put for different for the difference, multiply, division, any kind of methods you can just write, and you need to just put an export in front of it so that it will be exported. Okay, Now this we have created. Now we will deploy this to our org. So let's say I'm just deploying this. Okay, now our deployment is done, right? But how we are going to use it? Okay, so for example, I'm just going to, let's say, or maybe I'll just create a new component. Okay, so instead of utility component, I'll just keep something like you can say calculator. Okay, I'll just keep it as calculator, and then I'll deploy it. Now inside this, I will keep uh, inside this, I will keep two numbers basically. Okay, so type I'll keep it as text, placeholder I'll be having this on change, and then in JS I will put one on change event, or and here I'll define number one. Okay, number one and number two, and I'll just assign this as this dot number one equals event dot target dot value. Okay, similarly I'll put one more lightning input here, and again I'll put it as number two. Okay, label I'll just keep it as number one and number two, and then handle input number two. Again I'll just come here, add an event. Okay, and then next what we are going to do, we'll just keep one button. Okay, so I'll just keep one lightning button which will do the summation. Okay, so and variant I'll keep it as brand to show it like a button. Submit, I'll just click on handle click. Okay, now this is going to be our method. Okay, handle click. Now either I have two ways to do here. Either I can just add number one, number two here and then return the result, but we are going to use the utility component. Okay, just to showcase that how we can use the utility component methods in this LWC. Okay, so for that what we will do, we will again use an import followed by which function I want to import. So let's say I have this do summation. Okay, so I can just put do summation from from I'll just put C followed by the utility component which I have created. Utility component. So this is basically what I am doing is I am importing one function from the component or utility component which I have created by passing the path of the component. Similarly, if you have, let's say, two methods, you can just put a comma and then you can again add the another method. You can do an export there. Okay. Now I'll also just put one result val, and now let's see how we are going to use this method. So I'll just put this dot result val equals so since I have already imported it, I just need to call this method and pass the number. Okay, so this dot number one, I'll put it as number one, comma this dot number 2. Okay, and I'll try to place it here, or maybe I'll just put it below the button to see the result. Okay, so I'll put it here. Okay, so now we have created a simple component where I'm just passing the handle click and I'm just passing two number. But what different we are using is we are using a utility component here instead of writing the logics. So you can see that the code has become very simple here. We are just calling a method and then we are passing the numbers. Now let's try to deploy this. So it got deployed successfully. Now I'll just create a tab to show you all how it's going to look like or how it's going to work basically. So I can just click a lightning component tab. I can select a calculator where it is. Let me just see. Yeah, I have just added a calculator and then I'm just going to put like calculator. Okay, and then I just select any of the. I'll keep it as default on and I'll just save it. Now I'll just go to my lightning experience and I can show you how this is going to work. And now let's say I'll just give it here as 1, 2, 3, 4 and then 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I click on submit, so okay, so it is taking it as a text. I need to change it to number. So I can just, instead of text, I can keep it as number, number. Okay, so it got deployed. I'll just refresh this. Now we'll see adding the two numbers. So let's say I'm just keeping as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I'll just click on submit. So you can see that it gave me the summation. So here what I have done, I have not written any logic in the main component, but I'm getting the logic from the utility component. Similarly, if you want to create any kind of different components which will be using the summation logic, you can use the utility component. So this is the beauty of how you can create a reusable code and then how you can use it in the different places. Okay, so just one thing to note here, whenever you are giving a number, it will be in the form of number. So what I have done is I'm just using something like %. So what it will do, it will convert the number which you have entered into a integer just to showcase this value here. So I hope you got an idea of how the utility component works, how you can create your own utility components. So the main logic or the main function of utility component will be the export which you are going to use it. Okay, so you can just export keyword along with the function and you can create as many function as you want, and then you can use the required function in your LWC components for in order to save the number of lines in the main component. So with this, we will wrap up today's video. I hope you like the video. I'll be coming up with the more scenarios and maybe for the CSV download as well. I'll just create one more video for you guys. So till then, stay tuned to the channel. Thank you, and please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. This motivates us. So with this, thanks for your time. Bye bye.